Hey, Kieran here with a video all about a new feature that Shopify have launched to make life easier for app developers. API Health Check is a brand new feature of the partner dashboard, and it allows app developers to monitor the deprecated requests that their application is making. And it then gives them really clear timelines of when those deprecations are going to turn into breaking changes as the new version rolls over. The feature's only been in the wild for a couple of weeks, and at the time of recording there's no official documentation on the subject. But I have had time to play with this feature for a couple of days, and this is what I've learned. So in essence, this feature exposes Shopify's logging of deprecated requests. But what is a deprecated request? Well, in my testing over the last couple of days, I've discovered that it's basically any breaking change that has been introduced by a future version of the API. So what that means is if you're on 2019.04 right now with your application, any version that's released after 2019.04 that has a breaking change that and you're using that specific field or endpoint or object, then that will be logged in the API Health Check. A recent example of this would be the removal of pagination. Shopify have moved from page-based pagination to cursor-based pagination, and they've done this over a couple of different versions across all endpoints on the REST API. This means that if you have an application that's using page-based pagination, the API Health Check will log those deprecated requests and will alert you to which endpoints you're using that pagination on, and will give you a timeline for when that will become a breaking change and your app will break. This is obviously extremely useful for app developers who previously would have to have monitored the API change log and then have thought to themselves, which apps do I have? What are they doing? How are they using the API, and are they impacted? In effect, they'd have to do impact assessment themselves manually, whereas now Shopify are doing that impact assessment for you. They will simply flag in the partner dashboard exactly which applications are using endpoints that have breaking changes. So let's take a look at what this looks like in the partner dash itself. So here we are in the partner dashboard. You can see that I've got a few apps here, a couple of custom apps and a public unlisted app. Shopify is the app that we're going to be looking at specifically in this video. This app's just running on my local machine, as you can see down here, and this is the home controller of that app. It's just a vanilla install of the Shopify app gem, and I've just added this page param to the product query to trigger the deprecation notification in the partner dash. So as you can see here, all I'm doing is getting 5 products, and I'm requesting page 5 of those products. So this is using page-based pagination, not cursor-based pagination, and that should throw a deprecation request in the partner dash. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Ruby or using different languages, I've just put here the endpoint or the request that this code down here will create. So /admin/products.json with 2 query params, one that says limit equals 5, so I only want 5 products back per request, and page equals 5, so I want the 5th page of those requests, of those products. So let's look in the partner dash again. So we've got this new health check column here, and as you can see it says fixed by April the 1st 2020, which is to be expected because I'm using a version that's going to be sunset on April the 1st. Last detected 11 days ago, so that's when I was testing this originally. So if we jump into the API health check, so here you can see there's deprecated API calls made by Shopify. This timestamp here is really useful. This is when the report was last updated, so you can see here that it was last updated at 7:59 in the morning on the 9th of March. This is never normally more than a couple of hours out of date, so currently it is 10:51 in the morning, and this is showing approximately 8 a.m. So it's about 3 hours behind in terms of its cycle. Yeah, it's just something to bear in mind that if you're testing your app, you're probably going to have to wait a few hours for that to update. That said, I'm unaware if Shopify are varying this refresh frequency for apps with a greater number of requests. It's very possible that they may be changing this request frequency for apps that are making large volumes of requests, and that may update more often. So it could be a per API client thing, but it's worth keeping an eye on this date, so when you're testing nonetheless. So down here we've got a nice little interface which allows us to switch between deprecated call ranges. I'm just going to leave it on last 30 days because I was testing more than 7 days ago. And you can see here that there's 23 days left, and I need to update my application by the 1st of April 2020. So to give some background, the reason that I need to update by then is that I'm using 2019-04 in my application, which is obviously the version that's about to be sunset. I need to update to version 2019-07 or later. The reason for this is that Shopify introduced a breaking change in 2019-04, which was the removal of page-based pagination, as I said earlier. So they give you a quite nice little description of this. The page filter has been removed from multiple endpoints. You use cursor-based pagination, and this links you off to a guide into cursor-based pagination, which is really useful. It gives you the endpoint, the product endpoint, and it gives you the API that this relates to, so in this case REST, and it tells you when it was last detected. So as I said, this is actually a little bit out of date. I have made requests this morning using the application, so I would expect to see this update in a couple of hours to say that there's been a more recent request. So I have created another deprecation request to a different version of the API, and this is just to demonstrate Shopify's sort of color, their traffic light system, where anything that's going to be removed in the next version of the API to be sunset has this red flag next to it and gives you a number of days countdown, whereas anything that is being deprecated in a future version has this yellow or orange flag next to it and has 7 months left, or has a monthly count, I should say. So they then tell you to update this version by the 1st of October 2020. So this is, again, for some context, I'm making a request to the collect resource, and I'm asking for a collect from a smart collection. This has been deprecated, this behavior, and it tells me to migrate your app to use the new collections endpoint. Again, it gives me the API endpoint and which API we're dealing with, and it says when it was last detected. So this is just showing you how you will get a picture, sort of a roadmap of changes you're going to need to make to your app in the future. It's quite a nice sort of, it's a really nice, well thought out UI, and it gives app developers a great way to measure impact of changes that Shopify are making almost immediately. So the minute that the new version of the API is released, you'll start to see these deprecation requests appear. So this is obviously a complete game changer for app developers. It means that you have the ability to immediately audit your app, see what needs to be updated and make that change without the need to doing the manual audit yourself. We're certainly going to see this come into its own in the next couple of weeks as we move towards 2020-04, which of course will see the sunsetting of 2019-04, the first version of the API. And that in particular introduced pagination changes that I discussed earlier, and those changes will now become a breaking change once 2019-04 is sunset and 2019-07 becomes the oldest version available. Finally, having worked in the DX team at Shopify, I know how much work must have gone into this feature, so I really applaud everyone involved internally at Shopify for building this out. It's something that I know that both internally and externally has been requested a lot, and it's really great to see this in the hands of developers and giving them the opportunity to actually audit their applications themselves and know when they have a breaking change on their hands. So that's it for this video. Please don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell to be the first to know when our videos are posting, and I'll see you next time. Cheers!